Did you notice the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial, broke 30,000, a new milestone, a new record? Donald Trump noticed. This is what he said yesterday.
The stock market's just broken 30,000. Never been broken, that number. That's a sacred number, 30,000. Nobody thought they'd ever see it. That's the 9th time since the beginning of 2020. And it's the 48th time that we've broken records during the Trump administration.
It's a pretty amazing streak. All of those records broken during the Trump administration. I'd have to look back. I really haven't studied this, but I don't think any president over 4 years has broken those stock market records as much as Donald Trump has. It just kept going up and going up and going up. What was amazing to me, though, is everybody fought for credit. Donald Trump came out, made that announcement, dropped the mic, and then walked out. Wouldn't take any questions. Good for him. Because they were yelling, why don't you concede? You're ruining democracy. You're ruining democracy. That's the new theme. That's the new talking point. But then the Democrats came out and said, no, it was the election of Joe Biden. It was the fact that the transition is now happening. Well, the election happened a while back. No, it's his cabinet picks. His cabinet picks were so exciting. Everybody said they were boring. They were so exciting, the stock market took off. But this is why I thought of Thomas Hayes right away. Thomas Hayes is the chairman and managing member of Great Hill Capital, and he's wonderful with the media as well. Better with stocks, wonderful with the media. We have Thomas Hayes on the line right now. So, Thomas, what is it? What caused the stock market to go up past 30,000?
Well, Larry, it's great to be with you. Thanks for the introduction. This was really swift action from Secretary Mnuchin and Chair Powell in the month of March. They effectively saved us from a Great Depression. If we look at the amount of global coordinated fiscal and monetary policy, it's now in the neighborhood of about $20 trillion. And that's really just to solve a $3.6 trillion GDP contraction. So we're starting to feel the lagged effects of all of that policy that went into place in the spring, and it's showing up in the stock market numbers. And it's going to continue, Larry. There will be no Grinch this year for Christmas, and Santa Claus is coming to town. And here's why. Seasonally, 90% of the time in the last 25 years, the stock market is up between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we should get another few weeks. Certainly the 30,000 has brought in a lot of attention to the market. It may bring some money off the sideline. So that's kind of the nutshell of where we've come. I can talk to you a little bit about where we're going.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that in a second, but how about, it's not the vaccine? I thought the vaccine news is what was driving everything.
Well, that's in the short term. So that's number one is we've got now 3 vaccines, over 90% efficacy. It's a return to normal. But as you know, Larry, the market is a discounting mechanism. So the stock market knew, it rallied 100% off the bottom. It knew that the vaccine was coming. The good news is the efficacy is much higher than anticipated, and it came much sooner than expected. Most institutional managers were looking for an announcement in Q1. We're going to start vaccinations as soon as December 12th. So that's a very, very positive thing, and we're seeing that reflected in the market. And it looks like by May, they're now anticipating May may be the period that we can have herd immunity. So the stock market's starting to discount that forward economic growth, the impact of the money supply increase that went into this, and we're going to grow probably at 6% GDP. It'll be the fastest economic growth in about 35 years next year, and the vaccine is obviously a key component to that, bringing back all of the laggard sectors that have been left behind.
Thomas Hayes, chairman and managing member of Great Hill Capital, talking about the stock market hitting 30,000 yesterday. A lot of people said that one of the drivers for that was the fact that Janet Yellen was coming back, or was rumored to come back, as Fed chair. Any truth to that?
Yeah, there's an element of that's very positive, because we just didn't know how this administration was going to go. If you'd had an Elizabeth Warren, she would start cracking down on banks. which would limit credit growth, which is critical for a sustained expansion and a recovery. So to see Janet Yellen, the market is very comfortable. She was a very good chairperson of the Fed, and I think that put people at ease. So far, the cabinet appointments have been very moderate, very experienced, and the market likes that sense of normalcy and no outlier extremists being appointed at the moment.
So an Elizabeth Warren appointment to any position, Consumer Affairs, Secretary of Treasury, God forbid, that would be have a negative effect on the stock market?
Yeah, there's no question about it. But they're not going to give up her Senate seat, so that's something that's lower probability, which is very good news. I think the other thing we have to look forward to very carefully, Larry, is the January 5th runoff. Now, the odds favor that it will remain status quo. The Republicans will keep control of the Senate. But that's a key reason that you've seen a huge rally in the stock market since the election when the Republicans held the Senate, because divided government or gridlock is historically, over the last 100 years, the most favorable environment for the stock market, and particularly this year, because the implication, if there was a blue wave, is that the corporate tax rate would have gone from 21% to 28%. That would have taken $20 off of S&P earnings, and you would have probably had a 15 to 20% plus correction. Since we've held the Senate, the corporate tax rate will stay at 21%, and that's why the market is really moving ahead. So you don't want to see any negative surprises on January 5th, and it certainly doesn't look like we're going to see that. So that's very bullish moving forward.
Thomas Hayes, once again, chairman and managing member of Great Hill Capital. I was just going to bring up the corporate tax rate, and you got to it already. Is there anything else out there? Now, I know we're looking at lots of positive news coming ahead, and that's great news for the stock market. Not only do you have the Senate up there as a firewall, but as you mentioned, the unemployment rate will continue to shrink as we had some normalcy. The vaccine will be out. The GDP is going to grow. How could Joe Biden screw this up?
Well, it's going to be very difficult for him to screw it up. And the stage is set. We saw continuing claims this morning. They came down. Last print was 6.37 million. They came down to 6.07 million, which is going to bode very well for the jobs report next Friday. We could see the unemployment rate now drop from 6.9%, maybe to 6.7, maybe below 6.5. And no one would have anticipated that. And one of the key themes that I'm looking at here and what I do is, while the easy money may have been made in the general indices off the bottom in the short term, there's tremendous opportunity in some of the left-behind sectors, the laggard sectors like banks, like defense stocks, and like energy, and that's where we're focusing a lot of our effort. They've been up between 25 to 35% since the election. They're going to continue to rally relative to tech, which was the leader during the coronavirus period. They've only been up 10 to 15%. And what's basically happening, it's simple supply and demand, Larry. During COVID, in a slow growth environment, managers have to find those small pockets of growth that can work even when the economy is growing slowly. Now that the economy is going to be explosive growth, 6% plus, 22% earnings growth, we have many, many more options where we can purchase earnings growth because GDP is going to grow so fast. And that's why some of these left-behind sectors, there's still a lot of opportunity. So for people who feel they've been left behind, oh, my goodness, the Dow's now over 30,000, there are very great opportunities that can be as good, if not better, than having bought the indices in late March and early April. So you just have to be selective, and there's tremendous opportunity moving forward. The best analogy I would give, Larry, this is a new business cycle. And if you remember in summer of 2009, the market had rallied tremendously off those March lows. You remember the ominous 666 in the S&P 500. Similar new business cycle rally, and everyone thought after such a big rally, 80+% in a short period of time, it was all over. And the fact of the matter is, it was just getting started. This is a new business cycle. We've gone from 2 quarters of negative GDP growth due to COVID. We just had our first big 33% GDP annualized print for the most recent quarter, and we're going to continue to grow. So the outlook is bright. You've got 85 million millennials starting housing formation. You're seeing them snap up the houses all over the place, and that's going to continue. And this is going to be a very, very positive Roaring '20s moving forward. And I don't think
I'm only laughing here. I'm only laughing here, Thomas, because you're so good at this. But we're running out of time, and I just want to get, if I can.
Yes.
Can you give me a couple stocks? A couple of stocks.
Well, I'll tell you what we own. You know, people should definitely talk to their financial advisors. I'll talk about some of the key ones we own in those 3 areas. And banks, you know, basket of Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citi. Defense stocks, we own Raytheon, General Dynamics. And then energy, you really have to be the highest quality. Energy's had its best month in history, the highest quality, because the lower qualities are going to go bankrupt with more drilling regulations, but the big ones are going to gain share. You know, the Exxons, the Chevrons, the ConocoPhillips. Talk with your financial advisor, but there's tremendous opportunity in some of those stocks that have lagged this year that are going to lead next year.
Thomas Hayes, Chairman and Managing Member of Great Hill Capital, always great when he's on the radio or TV, and always gracious with his time. Thomas, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Larry. Happy Thanksgiving.
So there you go. Exxon, Bank of America. There's some stock tips from you. He works with big companies and gives them the tips. So I think he's always reluctant, but he came forward with it and told you where you should be putting your money. How about that? Nothing but clear skies ahead, rosiness